I am John Spreitzer. I am the president of the board of Kopernik. And on behalf, I again want to thank everybody for coming on behalf of the entire board. I want to recognize two people here who have put a lot of effort into this night, and that's Laura Lamash and Kelly Grace. The next person that's going to come up and speak to you is Drew Desker, our executive director.
Well, thank you, John, and witamy. Welcome. Both of my parents are Polish, and we're actually part of the original Kopernik Society that got this whole thing started. You can't hear me? Okay. Usually people don't say that, but here we go. I'll use my outside voice. And so again, I'm Drew Desker. I'm the director of the Kopernik Observatory, and it is really my honor to be up here this evening, following in the footsteps of just so many extraordinary people that made Kopernik happen and made Kopernik last this long. So, well, let's see here.
So I built this for Sherman's birthday. Happy birthday, Sherman.
Gee, thanks, Mr. Peabody. Well, what is it?
Well, actually, it's a time machine. I call it a Wayback. We just set it, turn it on, open the door, and there we are. Or were, really.
So we're gonna put our Wayback Machine back to 1973, and at a meeting of the Parish Council of St. Stanislaus Costa Church in Binghamton, a motion was made by Dr. Edward Kozlowski, a local dentist, that tried to do something significant to celebrate the approach of the 500th anniversary of the birth of Mikołaj Kopernik. Now, we know him as Mikołaj Kopernik, but most people know him as Nicholas Copernicus. And as we like to say, back in the 14th and 15th, 16th century, all academic work was done in Latin, and so Mikołaj Kopernik turned into Nicholas Copernicus. So, keep it. Anyway, that previous slide was, in fact, a picture of Copernicus, and we all know him as the person who ultimately developed the heliocentric model of our solar system that really transformed our concept of the universe. Now, Dr. Kozlowski was appointed the chairman of the Quincentennial Committee. This Quincentennial Committee then expanded to include not only members of St. Stanislaus in Binghamton, but also members of St. Casimir's Church in Endicott, All Saints Polish National Church in Johnson City, and the entire Triple Cities. So what you saw there was actually a dome, and actually I'm ahead of my slides here, so oops. Actually, I'm going to use this as an opportunity to go back to that slide because I wanted to point out something here. So, some of you may recognize that building as the back of Roberson Memorial, Roberson Museum and Science Center, and that little semicircle in the picture, in the center of the picture, is a dome that was secured by Richard DeLuca, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. So, Dr. Kozlowski was aware that there was an observatory dome resting on the grounds at Roberson, and the dome shown here in this slide, which is the dome we see in this slide. So he reached out to the Roberson Planetarium director, Richard DeLuca, and the museum director, Keith Martin, about the possibility of building a small observatory on site at Roberson. They ultimately decided that the city lights would be too bright and a different site would be more appropriate for the observatory. They then engaged Edward Neslick, a prominent builder and general contractor in the area. The most befitting suggestion was to build an astronomical observatory on one of the highest hills in Vestal, New York, on land donated by the Krakowski family. So as it turns out, Val Kozlowski and her family are here today, and we would ask you to please stand and be recognized. Val and the Kozlowski family. And again, the land that the Kopernik Observatory resides on was donated by the Krakowski family, and they are here as well. And we would ask you to stand up and be recognized. Okay. And the Neslick family are also here today, and I would ask them to be acknowledged and recognized, the Neslick family. And that's Lucia Neslick, and she had told me that Ed Neslick was a very prolific contractor in the area, and I guess the Cooper Admin building is actually built by Ed Neslick's firm. But Ed said that the thing he was most proud of was building the Kopernik Observatory. So I thank him for that. So here on the slide, you see a cornerstone that is actually built into our building. So in the fall of 1973, there was a gala at the Fountains Pavilion in Johnson City, and the keynote speaker was Commander Jim Lovell of Apollo 13. In this picture, to the left is Dr. Kozlowski. Then to his right is Commander Lovell, Ed Neslick, the builder of Kopernik, the architect Richard Kilsey, and then soon-to-be Assemblyman Richard Miller. They finally got the funds together and started to actually build the observatory. The dome on the left is actually the dome that was secured by Richard DeLuca. Then finally, in June of 1974, it was completed, and there was a big grand opening ceremony up at Kopernik, and it was open to the public with just a huge, huge celebration. It was then donated to Robeson, and it was donated, and its first director was Richard DeLuca, the planetarium director, who again secured that first telescope dome. Richard DeLuca is still living in the area, although he's unable to travel much. But we recently heard from Richard, and to be brief, he said, "There would not be a Kopernik Observatory without Ed Kozlowski. He was loved by everyone who interacted with him, including myself." Ed Neslick also deserves more credit than he ever received. He was open to any suggestions, open to any and all suggestions that I and Jim Kilsey made regarding the observatory itself. I'm certain that he quietly donated more time, money, and services of his construction company than he ever received credit for. And so this is what the Kopernik Observatory looked like in 1974 when it opened. Now, although the Kopernik Society made the Kopernik Observatory a reality, it still continued to celebrate its Polish heritage in the area. And there were, for many years, a troupe of Polish dancers, some of whom are here today. So, Polish dancers, if you were in that troupe, please, let's where are you? If you can. So part of Kopernik's bylaws actually are to promote Polish heritage, and we continue to do that every year with a number of events. And you're all invited to them as well. So now, in 1982, a new director was announced for Kopernik, Jay Sarton. He became a legend in the area among schools, bringing hands-on science engagement into the schools. During Jay's tenure, he provided guidance for what would turn into the Kopernik of today. Jay continued to be the director until 1996. Now, some of Jay's family actually traveled all the way here from the state of Maine, and then some. So we'd ask the Sarton family to please stand and be recognized. And if any of you remember Jay, I would encourage you to connect with the Sarton family so that they can convey your comments to Jay when they return home. All right, so finally, they got the money together and started a groundbreaking. But things look a little bit different back then. Apparently, construction workers wore suits during construction projects. You can see in this picture Senator Al Libas, James Tellen, Jay is in there as well. I believe Dr. Kozlowski is off on the left there. So this was the groundbreaking for the expansion in 1993. And work continued throughout the winter to make it happen. And that is an aerial view of what it turned into, adding an additional dome that has our Kresge 20-inch telescope, and adding about 5 times the floor space for additional classrooms. And in 1993, we actually started summer camps. These, which now we've I think just completed our 32nd summer camp. We even had summer camps during COVID, believe it or not. We did a remote summer camp, and thank you. It was certainly a challenge, but we made it happen, and the kids had a great time doing it too. So we eventually got to be up on the national stage from time to time. Amen. Amen. And that was Jay behind there, behind the scope there. I'm very impressed. That trying to sing in the morning is just, yeah, I'm impressed. All right, so coming to be about 2006, Roberson announced that it was really difficult for them to keep Kopernik open. They felt it was too expensive to run. So the Kopernik Society of Broome County went back to Roberson and said, look, if you don't want it anymore, we'll take it back. So in March of 2007, the Kopernik Society of Broome County became the owner of the Kopernik Observatory, and we changed the name from the Kopernik Space Education Center to the Kopernik Observatory and Science Center, which we are today. And we've had a number of notables that have been up at Kopernik. Up in the upper left-hand corner, you'll see a Vestal native, Dan Bursch. Next to him is Michelle Thaler, who is a director of science outreach at the Goddard Space Flight Center. To the right is Colonel Doug Wheelock on the ham radio station that's on the ISS. The lower left is Father George Coyne, and to the right is Brother Guy Cosmali. I keep screwing this name up. I have it in here somewhere. Pardon me? All right, well, I guess I apologize for that. Anyway, Brother Guy is actually now the director of the Vatican Observatory. Now, we've had a number of summer camps, and here you can see we're sort of post-COVID. We've still got some students with face masks on, but not everything we do is always about astronomy. We've got some creative construction where we build balsa wood bridges and try to break them. Created our own little solar systems. And we even ventured into VR. And get back to some of the basic sciences, looking at spectroscopy. Now, we've had been fortunate to be able to have 7 opportunities to have students at Kopernik talk to an astronaut on the International Space Station through ham radio. This past summer, we had one of our students, Jackson Peck, you're seeing right here, whose parents are here today, got his ham radio license and was the control operator for this ham radio contact. And Jackson's parents, if you want to sort of raise your hand over there. When he got his license, Jackson, is he still 10 years old? 10 years old. I'm very impressed, very impressed. And so during these ISS contacts, we get our students to actually have an opportunity to talk directly to an astronaut using the ham radio station we have at Kopernik, talking directly to the ham radio station on the ISS. So we only have about 10 minutes to get from horizon to horizon because we have to talk to it when it's above the horizon. And so it's sort of a very special choreographed time. We practice the students so that they're right at the microphone when they're ready to when the astronaut's ready to take the next question. We've also had an opportunity to do a number of balloon camps where students put together a payload. They get sent up on a weather balloon, and that payload goes to the edge of space, over 100,000 feet. This is actually a picture from one of those missions. You can actually see the curvature of the Earth, and you can actually see that blue line is actually our atmosphere. And this is actually a picture. We actually have a number of cameras on those payloads, and this is actually a picture right as the balloon is bursting up at 100,000 feet. Of course, no camp at Kopernik would be complete without viewing through a telescope, so any chance we can, we always try to get the kids to look at the sun safely, or if they're up there at night, to look at the night sky. We've been very fortunate to have a number of foundations in the area that have supported Kopernik, one of which is the Floyd Hooker Foundation, who provided us a portable planetarium that we were able to take out to schools, not only in Tioga County, but throughout Broome County, and we've taken it up north, up toward Plattsburgh, we've taken it down to New York City, down toward Philadelphia. So it's been an outstanding resource for us. Now back in 2016, we partnered with the Junior League of Binghamton to raise funds to build the Kopernik Science Park. This is a STEM-themed playground that we now actually use as a science classroom. Now, some of you might remember, this is what the place used to look like. As I used to say, we used to have a couple of frisbees and a football. That was about all the kids had to play with. You can sort of see you can see these orange cones. That's where the swamp was. There was actually a natural spring that was coming up and was actually causing a swamp. And of course, even though you put the cones up, that's where the kids still go. And so we said, we got to do something about that. So partnering with the Junior League, we created this fantastic playground that draws people from literally all over the county and all over the state. And it's a STEM-themed playground where we really highlight and focus what aspect of science or technology or engineering are part of everyday items. We even have a little library, which is actually a Girl Scout. I think some of those Girl Scouts are here. There's this Girl Scouts in the back. They actually built that for us. And we have to keep it stocked because it empties quickly. So if you have any books that you'd like to add to the library, bring them on up. And this is actually a photograph taken by Jenny Carty, our live-stream astronomer. You can actually see the Milky Way there in this picture, and that's actually the cover of our program this evening. Now we have a number of groups that also call Kopernik a home. It's the Kopernik Astronomic Society. This is a group of amateur astronomers, although they may be amateur, but what they do just looks so professional. And I would ask the KAS. We've got, I think, 3 tables of KAS. Would you please stand? They help run and maintain our scopes. They help us out on Friday nights with public outreach, and I am really very grateful to them for all they do for us. And we have the Gemini Girl Scout troop, which is another astronomy club. So again, Girl Scouts, stand back up again. And there we go. And they're, one of their leaders is one of our board members and a KAS member, Art Cassiola. And thank you, Art, for all your work with them. Art Cassiola. And I have to talk about BARA, the Binghamton Amateur Radio Association. It's a group of ham radio operators that has been around Binghamton area for over 75 years. I'm actually the president of the BARA Club, and we've been very fortunate. They call Kopernik their home, but they also provide support to Kopernik through a number of our summer camp programs. They provide communication for our Race to the Stars race. And so BARA members, would you stand up? There you go. Oh, there you go. By the way, that is a Johnny Hart BC comic that Johnny drew specifically for our club. Now, every Friday night we do a public program of some sort. And it's not always about astronomy. We've had somebody up talking about the physics of music. Why does a violin, an oboe, and a trumpet all sound different playing the same note? We've had people from the National Weather Service come up and talk about various aspects either of climate change. We have another National Weather Service talk that'll be later on this fall about tornadoes, and that I think this year we've had 32 tornadoes in New York State itself. So we have a wide range of presentations, and what's back in 2020, again, we'd have these programs every Friday night. Back in 2020, in March of 2020, we had to stop bringing people up to Kopernik because of COVID. And we said, okay, fine, we're just going to hold off for a couple of weeks until this COVID thing blows over. Clearly, that didn't quite work out that way as we had wished. And so we said, look, we have all these speakers lined up. Why don't we find a way to get those speakers to the public? So we had them zoom into Kopernik. We then turn it back around, put it out on our YouTube channel. We now have over 13,000 subscribers on our YouTube channel. So we do every one of our Friday night programs on YouTube, but also we'll do special events. We'll do observing sessions, we'll do meteor showers, we'll do eclipses. In fact, there was a lunar eclipse a couple years ago where we had over 25,000 people on the YouTube channel at one time. And in the chat, people were saying, we left NASA's stream because we like yours better. So, and a lot of that actually has to do with Jenny Carty, our live stream astronomer. So thank you, Jenny. So, they say never follow greatness, and that's why I chose to speak first. Well, by the way, this is our live stream. So if you're not familiar with it, just go to YouTube, type in Kopernik Observatory. You'll be able to see upcoming, our AstroFest Astronomy Festival is actually next week. You're invited to come up for that. You can see last night's program on World Space Day. But we had a talk on ham radio. We had a talk on straw bale housing construction. So there's a lot of great stuff on our YouTube channel. But anyway, back to what I was saying. Never follow greatness. And so our keynote speaker this evening is Dr. M. Stanley Whittingham, Distinguished Professor of Chemistry at Binghamton University and Director of the Northeast Center for Chemical Energy Storage. He was born a while ago in England, received his doctorate in chemistry at Oxford University. In 2019, he was named the winner of the Nobel Prize in Chemistry for the development of lithium-ion batteries. And you all have one in your pocket right now. And earlier this year, Dr. Whittingham was named a Knight Bachelor by King Charles III for his services to research in chemistry. It's my distinct honor to welcome Sir Dr. Whittingham to the stage. If I could just attach that to you, so that our camera can. Oh, okay. I'll get your slide on in a moment.
So thank you very much for those kind words. It's great to be here. I'll show you a slide in a few minutes, and I'll comment more on that later on what's happening. I've been in Binghamton, I think, 36, 37 years now. I had intended to come here for 5 or 6 years. It was a great place. I liked it here. Everybody's very friendly, so we've been very active here. So what I want to really talk about is why we're doing lithium batteries, what we're doing, and how we're trying to bring back that technology to America. And I always emphasize America because our colleagues just north of us have a lot of things we want, like clean energy, nickel, graphite, and a few other things. So if I can move this, I just push on this one, do I? Oops, too far. Can it go? This doesn't go back, I think. Oh, okay. Okay, so you're all familiar with what's been happening the last, particularly I would say the 5 to 8 years. There's disasters all the time, and we've seen this, very unexpected disaster in North Carolina. We thought hurricanes hit the coast and wouldn't do trouble inland, but it's now happening everywhere. And I'll just show you a few examples from around the world here, whether it's in Europe, Asia, and I'll show you one at the bottom there, which is Victoria Glacier in Canada. If you've never been to Banff National Park, go there, it's beautiful. I went there when the glacier, you could see it from the hotel. The last time I went was about 10 years ago. You had to walk about 2 miles, and it was around the corner. So glaciers are disappearing. Global warming is a fact, and really we have to do something about it. So I use global warming as just one example. We've all experienced some big changes in our lives. Maybe some of the younger folks don't remember when there was a time when we didn't have computers. When we got scientific journals for Australia, for example, took 2 months to get there. Now we know instantly when everything happens. So we have this huge communications revolution. You have your iPhones, so you know within a second if something happens anywhere in the world. Some good aspects of that and some bad ones, but that's been a real big change. And during COVID, we saw just how bad things can get, but we also saw how fast scientists can move to get us vaccines to get over that. The challenge we now have is this one of climate change. We know it's happening. It happens so much slower than these other things that it's difficult to really convince some folks that it's a reality. But we all see it coming before us. So we need to move ahead. We need to find clean ways of generating electricity, and I think it's important to point out, New York State hasn't generated any electricity using coal for several years now. And last week, United Kingdom generated its last kilowatt hour of electricity using coal. So we're moving ahead on that front. The key thing we're trying to do is replace, so we say, our dirty energy by clean energy, be it solar, wind, or hydro energy. And now I show you a picture of a certain powerful hydro facility. You all recognize this is Niagara Falls. How many of you have actually been there and looked at it at 3 a.m. in the morning? Anybody? Go there at 3 a.m. in the morning, there's no water going over the falls. It's all being directed elsewhere to generate electricity, store it in lakes. So if you're ever there, get up in the morning and just take a look and you'll see the huge difference. The other thing I would encourage you to do if you're in that part of the state, halfway between Niagara Falls and Niagara on the Lake on both sides, there's a museum which shows you how they generate the electricity. It's an operating museum, that's where they actually do the hydropower. It's really interesting. So let's look at just what we're going to do. We've got wind power, We've got solar. Solar in some parts of the country shines in the daytime. Binghamton until today didn't have too much sun. So if you're generating that energy by solar or wind, you have to have some means of storing it. And the two means of storing it are this way. You're all familiar with this, or have none of you ever seen this? Pumped hydro. New York State, Pennsylvania, and the Tennessee Valley Authority are three of the largest pumped hydro systems in this country. So they basically pump water up when electricity is cheap. That's in the spring and the fall. Then they use the water to generate power in the summer and the winter when we need much more power. So these are what we call seasonal systems. They're extremely efficient now, but no one will allow us to build any more of them. The environmentalists don't like us building lakes on top of mountains and another lake in the valley where you pump the water up and down. I was in Spain a year ago, and they've just built 2 new ones hidden in the valley where no one can see them. But it's one of the lowest cost, most efficient ways of doing it. But the way we're storing the energy now is in batteries. Is there anybody in this room who doesn't have a lithium battery on them? Well, you won't own up to it, even if you don't, right? Probably everyone has 2 or 3 on them. So you can make lithium batteries from what we call milliwatt hours. They may be in some smart credit cards built into them. You have them in your watches, your iPhones, your computers. But you also now have them in grid storage facilities and electric vehicles. So let me just show you where we started just a few years ago. And I think I was a bit younger then. Many of our younger people in the audience weren't around at that time. But in the early 1970s, all the major corporations in the United States had what we call large corporate research labs. These had a 10-year outlook. Bell Labs was probably the most famous of them. It wasn't MBA saying, what's the stock market doing tomorrow? This was long-term envisioned. And Exxon's goal, where I worked at that time, I should say it was really Esso then, but Exxon's goal was to become the energy company of the world, not the oil company of the world. So they hired a lot of us to work on anything energy related, provided it wasn't petroleum and it wasn't chemicals. So my particular group, we worked on batteries, and I'll show you some of the single crystals we made there. In the center is the original patent. This is the version they gave me a couple of years ago. And on the right-hand side, you'll see 2 of the original batteries we made. The top one is a gift we used to give away to potential customers. It has a solar cell on it, a battery, and a little watch. That particular one is still in my home. It was built about, we think, 1976. It's still working. So a well-made lithium battery lasts a long time. The one at the bottom there is a large battery made for electric vehicles. Exxon wanted to make electric vehicles at that time. Remember, there weren't any iPhones, there were no Sony toys or anything like that in that period. So they wanted to broaden out and do all those things. So that's where we stood back then. Let's look where we are now. So I show you a series of electrified vehicles here. 2 are from Broome County. So one of those is the Raymond forklift truck. They are now making these right in just a few miles down the street here. They opened up a brand new facility about 2 weeks ago. So they're now making those batteries there. Clean energy, totally electric, so they're used by companies like Amazon. Beneath that is BAE Systems bus. BAE does all the electrification of the buses right here in Endicott for the company worldwide. So the hybrid buses you see in Broome County are electrified by BAE Systems. On the top there in the middle, you'll see a little electric car. This is one my wife and I drove in Bermuda for our 50th anniversary. Any of you who've been to Bermuda, you're not allowed to rent cars. but they changed the law. If you rented an electric car, you could drive it. So they'd had them there for a couple of weeks, so we said, we'll try one of these out. We weren't going to, at our age, going to ride scooters. So we rented this out, and they said, be wary. If you drive to the other end of the island, make sure you recharge it before you come back. So we did that, drove to the other end of the island, went to the recharging station. They were still building it. So fortunately, we found a little recharging place at a restaurant part way back, had dinner and got enough electricity in it so we could creep back to give the car back to them. The other two vehicles at the top there at Pacor, at the test center just north of Seattle. There's a large 16-wheeler truck. This particular truck is now in the Los Angeles docks. And next to it is a garbage truck. Both of those totally electric trucks. And I got the opportunity of driving those around the test track. They said, please don't go above 60 miles an hour and don't go up on the high edges, on the curves. But they put about 3 tons of concrete in the back of the 16-wheeler because it's very unstable otherwise. But they accelerate fast if they're electric. The garbage truck clearly is a perfect use for electricity. Remember the stop-start, up, down, all day long. So we feel that more trucks are going to go that way. At the bottom, you'll see 4 buses. I took these pictures maybe 2 years ago in London, in Oxford Street. The biggest one is a fuel cell bus. One of the others is a pure electric, then a hybrid electric, and then what they call a clean diesel. So they were trying out all these different vehicles as to what was the best one to use. And last time I was there, it looks like they're preferring to have hybrid electric, and that's probably what is also best for places like upstate New York, where we get a bit of snow, it's cold, and we have hills. So what about grid storage? We all hear about that. So if you're going to have the renewables, you've got to store the energy. And I'll show you 3 examples there. A wind storage facility in West Virginia. This is about 8 years old. How many of you recognize that picture from the bottom right? That was next to the coal power plant right here. Installed about 2009, if I recollect correctly. They turned it on. 2 months later, they turned off the coal power plant, and it never got turned back on again. So a small electric storage battery can give the same use as what we call a peaker power plant, which that coal power plant was. That particular battery, after the big flood in 2011, it floated. They fixed it. It then went to the state of Ohio, and then it went to Puerto Rico. Remember, they had these 2 huge hurricanes back to back. It went there to stabilize the grid, and as far as I know, it's still working. So this is a large battery, and we're proud of this particular one because it was made in America by Americans. It was not an Asian battery. So it's working very well, and this is what we look forward to in the future. Another use of lithium-ion batteries. This is the International Space Station. When we were in Stockholm, I and 2 of the physicists had the chance of talking to these 2 astronauts live, and it's just like talking to all of you. There's no delay at all when we talk backwards and forwards. And they had just replaced all the old nickel metal hydride in the space station by lithium-ion batteries. They were happy because they weighed half as much, took up half the space, and would last twice as long. So lithium batteries are everywhere today. But we do have a big problem. Today, essentially all these lithium-ion batteries are either made in Asia or they're beginning to be made in this country, but by Asian companies. So there's very few batteries, energy storage. As Chuck Schumer would say, made in America by Americans. What we're trying to do is change that. So let's just look at what we call the ecosystem of a lithium-ion battery. You could do this for any other system. You start by mining the materials. You then convert these into the materials you want. You then build the cells. Then after that, you then have a lot of electronics to make sure they don't go wrong. So remember, lithium batteries have what we call organic electrolytes in them. So you have to make sure you control them very carefully so they don't go wrong. Unlike lead-acid batteries, where if you overcharge or over-discharge, you make hydrogen oxygen and they recombine. So how many people in this audience remember lead-acid batteries? You used to have to measure the pH and you have to keep adding water to them. Remember those days? So they're now sealed. They have this platinum inside them that recombines the hydrogen oxygen to put the water back where it belongs. So big change there. But what we then have the applications, and then what we hope to do is all these old batteries get recycled. So today about 95% of all lead-acid batteries are recycled, because if you go and try to buy a new lead-acid battery from, say, Walmart's, what do they do if you try to buy it? They charge you an extra $25 or $30 if you don't give them back an old one. So almost essentially all of them are recycled. This is what we hope to do with the lithium-ion batteries, particularly because the lithium-ion batteries have in them valuable metals that are basically controlled today by the Chinese. So our comment is we should keep those there, recycle them totally. And if any of you read the Apple announcements, Apple has announced that they're not using any new cobalt in any of their devices. All the cobalt they're now using in the iPhones, the computers, all recycled cobalt. So this is the system. On the right-hand side, I'll show you, this is where we're going to build New York's prototyping facility. So when you invent a new idea for a battery, you don't send it all to China to make, say, 1,000 cells for testing. You better do it all in Johnson City. So if any of you... So if any of you got the COVID vaccine early on from the state site, it was in that building. That building is now owned by the University Foundation. So we have better, shall we say, control over the facilities. We're using the distribution warehouse in there. That's where the battery facility will be going. We've started design. We're getting all the permitting we need to put that into place. But we can't do everything ourselves. So what we have done is got 2 big awards, one from the Economic Development Administration. They're paying for that facility. Then recently we got one from the National Science Foundation. If we get all the funding from NSF, that's $160 million. And that will help us solve all the problems on this circular ecosystem. And you can see we've put a few companies on there who are our partners to try to make that happen. We also work with things like the Battery Consortium out of Albany. And none of this is possible without us getting on well with our politicians. And I think you'll recognize somebody in the bottom right-hand corner there. Right? Anybody not recognize him? So Chuck Schumer put all the bills together in Washington that gave the money for all these initiatives to help us solve climate change. He's been to Binghamton, I think, 3 or 4 times in the last 3 years, trying to encourage us to do all of this. So he's very actively pushing this area. Obviously, he would like a lot of this federal money to come to New York State. So we're doing that. So a few messages here, particularly maybe for some of the younger folks and for some of the teachers. Don't get yourself too narrowly in any one discipline in the university. Everything exciting's really at the interface between the disciplines. Okay, So don't be a chemist or a physicist, be someone between chemistry and, say, materials, or chemistry and medicine. That's where the action is. Also be aware we can't do everything ourselves. We have to work in the international arena. So we need to work with folks everywhere around the world. And that means we have to some extent understand cultures. So I'm a champion of students learning other languages. And obviously I'm a little biased there, as my wife was chair of modern languages at Oswego for many years. And the number of students taking languages is going lower and lower. But we can't work with other countries unless we know a little bit about their languages. So I've mentioned these two in particular because the Nobel Prize, there were three of us. One was a chemist, one was a physicist, and one was an engineer. Okay? One was from America, one from Europe, and one from Asia. I'm English, but I got it in America. John Goodenough was American, but he got his in England. So we folks move around all the time. So if you want to travel around the world, become a scientist or an engineer, there's a huge number of opportunities there. But I think the thing I want to mention, the next generation is absolutely critical. We have to train the next generation. We have to entice them to get into science and convince them it's not all that tough. And it's an area where you can really enjoy yourselves, you can have a great career, and you have some lovely challenges to attack. So I show you a picture at the bottom there from Padova, Italy. I don't know how many of you have been there. This is a famous, one of the oldest universities in the world. It's where Galileo spent maybe 20 years. That particular university was protected by Venice from the Roman Church in Rome, because they didn't like people looking at the universe and describing it, hey, the earth is round, it's circular and things like that. So he was protected there. Other thing for the teachers there, all the students, if they wanted to take a class, paid the teacher directly. You did not pay the university, you paid directly to the teacher. So if you gave a lousy lecture, you would not get paid, which was very interesting. But if you're in Italy, go to this university. It's an amazing university. It has some of the original telescopes there. It also has the first anatomy dissection table for medicine in the world is actually in that university. Let me go to the last slide, and really to emphasize, Kopernik is in the right place to I don't want to use the word entrap, but get the youngsters excited about science, excited about looking at the stars, because the challenge we have today, most youngsters don't make anything, they don't fix anything, they want to do everything on the computer. That's not what corporations want. They want people who can fix things and do things. So I just wanted to say welcome to the next 50 years. I hope they're as good as the last 50 years for all of you. Thank you very much.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Whittingham. That is inspiring, and I think I'll be speaking to some of his comments tonight. I'm Laura Lamache. I am Director of Education for Kopernik Observatory and also a member of the Kopernik Board of Directors.
Just gonna plug this out.
Two?
Yep, for the recording.
For much of my career, I was a classroom teacher. Many of those years I taught 4th grade here in the great city of Binghamton, Mayor Cram. Thursdays was our science day, and I am not sure who was more excited, my students or me. My students never quite knew what to expect on those days, and actually I don't think I did either. And I just want to shout out, where's Doug Green? This is my former principal, right? He can speak to that. Where's Susie, my former colleague? We loved what we did. There was always something messy, a surprise, something confounding. And then there was the more serious work of observing, measuring, drawing, writing, thinking. What was really happening, Dr. Whittingham, was that in a very small way we were living your life, the life of a scientist. It is the life of the mind and the heart, of thinking and wonderment, passion, perseverance, and curiosity. It is this love for science and the sense of wonder and amazement it gives us that brings us together this evening to celebrate Copernic's golden anniversary. We are here because we believe in the vision of Kopernik Observatory and Science Center to promote scientific literacy as essential to creating an equitable and sustainable world through inspiration and civic engagement. We are here because we believe in Copernik's mission to advance lifelong learning where inquisitive minds of all ages can thrive. Now, the next 50 years, what will that look like? This question has me preoccupied with the moon, and this beautiful picture is by Jenny. Thank you, Jenny. Last week I said to Jenny, I need a beautiful picture of the moon. And this moon has me thinking about the past. Sometimes to see the future, you must look to the past. 55 years ago, on July 20th, 1969, all eyes were on the moon. In 1969, I was a young child in pajamas, staying up late, watching dreamlike images on the television. We listened when Neil Armstrong announced, "The Eagle has landed." And 6 hours later, we watched as the first humans stepped onto the moon. The enormity of this accomplishment is difficult to grasp today, but many of us here remember this incredible moment. Those of us who remember, like the founders of Kopernik, are the stewards of that awe and wonderment for the generations that followed. This is the legacy that defines Kopernik Observatory and Science Center. The Eagle has landed. It was in this excitement of the Apollo moon missions that Broome County's Polish community united to honor their countryman, Mikołaj Kopernik, on his 500th birthday. Copernic's heliocentric model made so much more sense. In Kopernik, we have the rise of science as sense-making, of offering us ways to explain the world around us anchored in scientific inquiry. And in this, he challenged deeply held beliefs. Kopernik published his findings in the year of his death, 1543. Had he lived beyond that, we may have had a different ending to his story. A century later, Galileo used the tools of science to prove Copernic's theory. Through his telescope, Galileo watched the phases of the moon and Venus. He saw the rings of Saturn and the moons of Jupiter. These hand-drawn sketches and diagrams and the video slow scans of early television are the precursor to our view of the universe today. Launched on December 25th, 2021, the Webb telescope orbits the sun, opening our eyes and our minds to the depths and mysteries of the universe. NASA's Artemis program has set into motion human space missions to the moon and back. Its goal is to establish a long-term presence on the moon. And the Artemis program is in preparation for a human mission to Mars. And we must not forget the International Space Station, the successor to Skylab. For 25 years, the ISS has orbited the Earth at 17,000 miles an hour and has been home to over 270 astronauts from 20 countries. Now, Drew mentioned this. Every summer at Kopernik, there is an incredible moment of magic when Drew leads a group of students in speaking to the ISS. K1SS, KA1SS, I'm learning ham radio. I'm working on it, Drew. I'm going to get my license, I promise you. KA1SS, KA1SS, this is Kilo 2, Romeo, Zulu, Oscar. Do you copy? And we wait. KA1SS, KA1SS, this is Kilo 2, Romeo, Zulu, Oscar. Do you copy? And we wait. And then, Kilo 2, Romeo, Zulu, Oscar, we've got you loud and clear. Welcome aboard the International Space Station. Wow. Wow. And there are those kids talking to astronauts, moving at 17,000 miles overhead, orbiting the Earth 16 times a day. Amazing. Oops. Well, moving ahead. What does this past tell us about Kopernik's future? This evening you've been surrounded by many images of young people, and we have some of those young people here today. Lucia and Elsa, Celia and Anne, Mary, Fran, Megan, and I don't have Phoenix's picture here, but I know she's out there. Can you stand up, Phoenix, so we can see you? This is Jay Sarton's granddaughter. Thank you. So, what is it we want for them and all our young people? Certainly, we have seen incredible, astounding innovations in science and technology, and Dr. Whittingham, I think you led us in that thinking tonight. But what has not changed is our humanity. Come spend a day with us at Kopernik, with Jenny and Sasha and Pat and Rob and Drew. Come join us for a day when we have a full house of students. And you will see the ways in which wonderment, curiosity, and excitement ignite young minds and inspire joy. The tools may change, but the heart remains constant. This is the science that connects us to each other and our humanity. This is the gift of Kopernik. Some more beautiful pictures. Kopernik is at a critical point in its history. To fulfill our mission and vision will require us to reinvest in our campus and our faculty. In this 50th year, we are returning to the spirit of our founding members to imagine the new future of Kopernik. This year's 2024 annual drive will be a first step in this journey to reach for the stars. Kopernik has already begun to feel this new energy. In July, Kopernik was awarded $200,000 to expand outreach to schools and community centers. With these funds, yes. With these funds, we will purchase a van and a second, larger portable planetarium. So I had a funny moment. I texted Drew this morning. I said, would it be too tacky if I made the van move across the slide? And then my partner said, I want the Kopernik logo on the van. I said, no, that's it. This is what you get, a van. We're soon to own this van, by the way. So, Susie, you asked if we can go down to, yes, we can. So, very excited. So with these funds, we're purchasing a van, but what's also important is we will be purchasing devices and software to develop a middle and high school program that teaches students not just how to use virtual reality, but to create it. Okay, and that's an important distinction between using it and creating it. This year, too, we have received a commitment from New York State, thank you to Donna Lupardo, for $150,000 to develop and expand our instructional programs. We invite all of you to join us in imagining what the next 50 years will be. We know there will be changes that far exceed what we can imagine. But we also know that what does not change is our connection to each other, our humanity, and our hope for a better future and for a more peaceful world. And we hope for this for our generations now and for our generations to come and all the young people here today. So we are looking up and we're dreaming big, and together we will reach for the stars. So thank you. At this time, I believe, Drew, are we ready? I'm going to turn the mic over to Drew. All right. And
I'll grab your other mic. All right, before we move on, I discovered my youngest daughter told me that today is International Teachers Day. So I would like all teachers to stand up and be recognized. It's the worst paid, but most effective job anybody could ever have. And anyway, so thank you all teachers. And just also, we're putting out there, we are actually looking for teachers. So if you are either recently retired or you've got some spare time, come talk to Dr. Lamash. All right. I'd like to do one other thing also is Kopernik is more than just Laura, myself, and a couple of our staff members. In fact, actually, let me have my staff members stand up. Jenny, would you stand up, please? Pat? Olaf? Art? Sasha? Roy, yep, exactly. So I thank you for your dedication to Kopernik and making it the kind of place that people love to come to. This year we had nearly 200 students for our summer camp. But along with the teachers, the only way a place like Kopernik could really exist is with a really active board. And I have the best board you could ever find. I would like my board members to bring your champagne up and join me up on the stage. So with me is Dr. Tom O'Brien. John Spreitzer is our board president. Art Cassiola, Nick Gretzinger, Kelly Grace, who made this whole thing happen, Irene Sidlarczyk, our past president, Mike Blake, Jim Penwell, Dr. Laura Lamish, and Brian Bodwin. So I thank you for, I said Kelly. So I thank you for your dedication. One of my board members, boss said, is Kopernik actually starting to pay you yet? Because they spend an extraordinary amount of time to really make Kopernik happen. But what I ask everyone here now to do is to take your glass of beverage, whatever that is, and first we want to honor those people 50 plus years ago that had the vision and had the inspiration and put the sweat and toil into making Kopernik what it is. Na zdrowie. I'll do a second toast to those here gathered today that recognize what it is that Kopernik is in the community and acknowledge that it needs to continue and grow and do what it needs to do to get these younger people engaged in STEM education, but also you all need to continue your education as well. So I want to see you all up on a Friday night up at Kopernik. So to you all. And then finally, for the next 50 years, probably not most of us are going to be here for that gala, but I hope some of you will. And I look forward to working with you all to make our next footsteps into the next 50 years as important and as fruitful as the previous 50 years have been. So, to you all, I thank you, and one more time. So, we have one more thing to do, and if you saw, I believe out in the display case, there is the Kopernik Astronomical Society has a number of images, but it's around the corner. Could you grab? I'm sorry. What? Sure. Yeah. We've got a special telescope called a C-star, and what's really great about this star, it's actually not a telescope that you look through, but it's actually one that you do imaging with, and it's extraordinarily easy to use. It works directly with your phone or tablet, and you can see some of the pictures out here. And one of you this evening is going home with this C-star telescope. So I didn't put mine in here, so I'm good.
Both of us.
All right. Okay, I'm gonna swirl it around, and then Laura, you pick it. Okay. All right, we've got a winner.
All right. Stephen Gwynn. Oh my God. Stephen Gwynn.
All right, Stephen. Congratulations, and we'll get a picture of you with your scope out by the banner. So, I think at this point, our evening has officially come to a close.
We're going to observe?
What? Yes. Now, I believe tonight's skies are actually quite good, and if I could get the KES to get the scopes out, we actually have two scopes that we'd like to, maybe even our C-star. But we've got two scopes that you can look through. One is a refracting telescope, and Saturn should be visible. We also are very fortunate to have a wheelchair-accessible scope that was donated by the Teleska family. Andy Teleska was a physics professor that was very engaged in Kopernik over years. He sadly passed away a few years ago, and his family provided the funding to make that scope available. So we hope to get that up and looking at Saturn as well. So I thank you. Don Lepardo said we should be doing this every year.
Are you ready, Kelly?
Well,
Jan? No?
give us a couple of weeks to think about it, and maybe we'll see you next year. But thanks again, and safe travels and clear skies.